We'd like to welcome you all to our second Zoom meeting tonight, and we appreciate you all coming to it via Zoom. So we still are continuing our Audubon Advocates. We're going virtual. The classes are at the Vero Beach, Citrus, Indian River Academy, and Pelican Island elementary schools with a teacher helping us there. And then we're having expert scientists coming in and speaking from our Audubon house to the kids live so that they can interact with the scientists. A lot of it is going outdoors. They are exploring the outdoor campus. We've got kids starting their native gardens, so we've given them all native plants, and we've given them a nighttime camera that they could set up on the campus, and so there's finding the wildlife that's there at night, possums and raccoons so far. I haven't seen a gator or so they're exploring their outdoor campus, and they're collecting. Today, the subject was bloodsuckers. So Dr. Nathan from the University of Florida spoke about most all the animals that suck blood, and the kids really loved that. And they also went out with nets and captured insects and got them identified. We also started making some videos that are available. They're on our website. We have one of us. These are short ones, but it's introducing native plants you can get on. Different birds. We've got special, we even have a cottontail rabbit that hangs around our place, and we've got a lot of photos of that and talk about that. The one about the origins of the stick marsh and as a critical wildlife habitat. And then we have a little introduction to invasive species. The kids are still, we're supporting a couple of teachers at the school to handle the work there. So if you wanted to make a donation to our after school program, we'd appreciate it that way. They seem to be very enthusiastic and they're kind of anxious to get outside because I think they've been cooped up for quite a long time. It takes about $400 for a fifth grader to carry out the program, but they really enjoy it. This is our Trees for Life program. Now we're giving away free trees. You have to take a short test online, and then we can give you a tree. Trees are really important. They beautify your yard, they cool your area, they improve water quality, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and they're really good for birds and other wildlife. So we encourage that. And on our website, you can find out where we planted these trees. Every tree has got a mark on a GPS map. So we have planted over 1,600 trees so far, and we've got 590 live oaks that I want to give out almost immediately. They're ready to go into the ground. And so if you want a live oak, contact us. We also have some cypress and some mahogany trees if you would like some of those. They're all free. This just shows you the distributions of different other species that we've had during the area time that we started this project, which is about 2 years ago. We got a real nice video on Blue Cypress Lake. It runs about 6 minutes and covers what is in our book about reflections of Blue Cypress Lake that we printed up. So they just wanted to see the video of it. You can get that online. We have another great video, The Birder's Guide to Migration in Indian River County by Will Johnson and Julian Gurdon. This is the beginning of it here. It also gives the hot spots for reviewing migratory birds in Indian River County, Brevard, and St. Lucie County. So it tells you if you want to go see a particular bird, where you should go, and gives a lot of detail. These are some of our top 2 birders that we have. We also are keeping, Doug Tallamy has a very beautiful video out, restoring the little things that run the world. And it's online at our website, so you can get that. It's very well done. It was a presentation that he made to Audubon, Florida, just a short time ago. So we need a lot of help, volunteers. You can help, office help, getting some air potatoes. We need to try to keep that horrible invasive species. You want to do some house cleaning, that's nice. Working in our landscape nursery, Trees for Life project, and planting plants is really good. We're interested in leading field trips. We're starting field trips up, by the way. We're going to start having some new ones in November and in December, and you can get on our website. We'll also be having them in our newsletter. Fundraising, if you're interested, could use some help in publicity and trail maintenance. Working together, we can do great things for the environment. We have an online store called the Pelican Nest. You can get some books there, but some other things I have listed here if you want to get that. All this is online. Our library, we have a couple thousand books, mostly related to birds and wildlife. And you can see the titles and authors on our website if you want to explore some and come and pick up birds. Our office is open, but we require everybody to have a mask on at all times. Nita, do you want to cover the bird of the month here?
I'd be happy to. Hello, everyone. We have a new bird. Florida birds need plants, and we have some wonderful photographers sending in your photos. And Don Rhodes would send me periodically things. He was in one of the classes 2 years ago, and he volunteered for the ELC, giving tours, and he loved to hear stories about birds. And he appreciated the book because he could get from the class and the book many stories to share with all of the people that he would give tours to. And he was a good storyteller and great fun. And he followed the Eagle's nest on 6th Street. And it would be great if he could do it this year. Unfortunately, he was killed on a motorcycle accident. And but he had given this picture to me and another one on snail kites, where these two birds were just carrying the nesting material. And certainly they're carrying sticks to make a nest. And you can tell it's a she by this necklace on her. So she's carrying the sticks to help make the nest. And they build the nest together and look after and feed the young together. We had a big day team. We first held, David Simpson and I held the classes for eBird to get everybody on eBird. And then everybody got out on the 17th, on last Saturday. And we had a great time together. And we together had 88 complete checklists and 10 hotspots and many personal locations. And together we all got 115 different species.
In our county.
In the county, yes, this is the county. So it was probably almost 3 times as many as last year, because I didn't organize things. And so when we work together, we can do great things. Okay.
So
turn in your pictures.
We're ready for our speaker tonight. The reason everybody is here. And I'm so happy that we have our speaker, Laura Brandt from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. She's going to be talking about what everybody thinks about here when they come to Florida, or is the alligators and crocodiles. I remember the first time I saw a crocodile was going down in the Everglades. There's one spot where they have some crocodiles there, and I enjoyed seeing them. And I was quite surprised to see them and recognize them by their teeth, I guess, is one of the best ways. We'll find out tonight. So, Laura, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this for us.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I wish we could all be in person, but you know, we'll make do with this. And I appreciate everybody coming out tonight to hear what I have to say. I love alligators and crocodiles. I find them very fascinating, and what I want to do today is just share with you guys a little bit about alligators and crocodiles, starting off with the crocodilians we have in South Florida, why we study them, some basic information about alligators and crocodiles, some of the questions that I always get asked by people about alligators and crocodiles, and then how we use them as indicators of what we're doing with Everglades restoration. And so usually when I'm in person with people, I'll ask them how many species of crocodilians do we have in South Florida? And most people will say one or two, because a lot of people don't realize that we have crocodiles here as well as alligators. But we actually have 3 species. These two, the American alligator, which is on the left part of the screen, and the American crocodile, which is on the right part of the screen, are our native species. We have a 3rd species that is not a native, but it's been introduced and it's breeding in the Homestead area in Miami-Dade County, and that's the spectacled caiman. And it's a cousin to the alligator. And they were introduced through the pet trade because when alligators were put on the endangered species list, people couldn't get them. And so the pet stores would bring in the caimans and people would buy them. And then of course they would be told that, well, don't worry, just keep it in a small cage and it'll be fine and it won't grow. And that was a lie. And they would grow and they would get to be 2 or 3 feet, and caimans are not very friendly. And they don't make very good pets. And so people would let them go because they didn't know the difference between alligators and caimans. And so now we have a population of them in South Florida. That's about all I'm going to say about those guys today. What I'm going to focus on is the American alligator and the American crocodile. And it's really interesting because the American alligator occurs all the way from up in North Carolina. Historically, there's some reports from the Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia, but really coastal North Carolina, all the way down to South Florida, and then all the way west to Texas and north into a little bit into Oklahoma and Arkansas. And so where we are with relative to the alligators range is we're in the southern part of the alligators range, and they're actually a temperate species. So they can live in areas that are pretty chilly. And I used to work up here in Aiken, South Carolina, and I actually have pictures of alligators with their noses frozen in the ice in the wintertime, and they were fine. In contrast, the American crocodile is a tropical species, and its native distribution is in Central and South America, the Caribbean, and then here in South Florida. And the northern extent of the crocodile's range is along the coastal areas, along a cold weather thermocline for the coldest month of the year. And so they are kind of the opposite of the alligators in terms of their distribution. We're at their northern boundary of their distribution, whereas we're at the southern boundary of the alligators' distribution. So today, when I talk about some of the work that we've done on crocodiles, I'm going to be talking about mostly this area in Florida Bay, Flamingo area, all the way over to Crocodile Lake National Wildlife Refuge. This is where the majority of crocodiles are in Florida, though they are showing up in many more places, going up both coasts. Been a few up in Sarasota, Tampa area, and then some up here as far as historically they were all the way up to Lake Worth. So why do we study crocodilians? Well, one of the reasons is because they are rare species and we want to conserve rare species. Another is that they are commercially valuable for both their meat and hides and people who make leather products. And a third reason is because there are people's perceptions of crocodiles and alligators are that they're big, ferocious animals and they're going to get eaten by them. And so there's a lot of education that needs to happen to have people understand how to live with alligators and crocodiles safely. So by studying them, we can understand better the habits of alligators and crocodiles so that we can advise folks how best to manage themselves to avoid any negative crocodilian interactions. And then the last reason is the one that I'm going to focus the second half of the talk on, is as how we use them as ecological indicators. And in the case of the Everglades, we do it focusing on what we're doing with Everglades restoration, which is very much tied to hydrology, to water, and system productivity. So people always ask me, how do you tell the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? And so one of the things is, and Dr. Baker mentioned this with the teeth, one of the things is you can look at the teeth, and the crocodiles have this groove here on their upper jaw, and the fourth tooth actually extends into that, and you can see it when their mouth is closed. Whereas the alligator doesn't. And so when its mouth's closed, you can't really see the teeth unless they have kind of scraggly teeth, which they do on occasion. Another thing is that alligators have more rounded snout, and they're generally darker in color. They're generally a black, whereas crocodiles have a pointier snout and they're more of a gray or kind of even a yellowish color. So where do alligators live? Well, pretty much any freshwater, any water body within Florida. So they'll live in lakes and ponds, they'll live in marshes, they'll live in canals, and sometimes they even end up in people's swimming pools and other man-made habitats. Crocodiles, similarly, though they are a more coastal species, and they live in the mangrove-lined creek bays and ponds, primarily in the South Florida, Florida Bay area, but again, like I said, extending up both coasts. They nest on these exposed shorelines, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. And they also occur at the Florida Power and Light Turkey Point Power Plant site, where there's the whole series of canals and berms that were established to cool the water from the cooling system. And what attracted crocodiles to that area is not the warmer water, which is what people assume, but it was the presence of the high ground for nesting. Crocodiles also do and are more and more often showing up in areas that are developed. And I believe this was on the University of Miami campus where they showed up on one of the in one of the ponds there. And then they oftentimes show up on golf courses. And one of the things that we've been trying to work with the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission on is appropriate policies for when should crocodiles be moved out of an area versus just left there and have people be able to enjoy seeing a threatened species. Another question that people always ask me is, how big do alligators get? And you guys probably have seen somewhere in the internet these humongous alligators that look like they're 28 or 30 feet. And this headline was a 28-foot alligator killed. Well, that's not right. They don't get that big. The average size, this is the average, it's not, it's 6 to 8 feet for females and 8 to 10 feet for males. There are places like in Lake Okeechobee where there are a lot of bigger animals that can get 12 to 14 feet, but the verified record for an alligator was 14 feet, 9.25 inches, and this was in Alabama. And so when you see stories about there being these 15 to 20 foot alligators, that's probably an optical illusion. Crocodiles get a little bit bigger than alligators, and the males are bigger than females, just like in the just like in alligators. So another thing that people are always curious about is what alligators and crocodiles eat. Well, they eat fish. They'll eat mammals. They'll eat deer if they're a big alligator. Sometimes they'll even eat other alligators, and this happens a lot during the dry season when conditions get crowded, especially where either in alligator ponds where multiple alligators are pushed into the same area, or in canals where things dry down, and there's either a limitation of food resources, or this could be an aggressive interaction where the bigger alligator didn't want to tolerate the smaller alligator. So I really like this little cartoon slide because it really does illustrate the kind of breadth of things that alligators can eat. And I always like to say that they eat everything that moves and some things that don't. And the bigger they are, the bigger the things that they eat. And, you know, a friend of mine sent me this this slide here, and they asked me, they said, is this how alligators get their food? So you see here, this is when it's drying down and there's a whole bunch of alligators. This is Shark Valley down in Everglades National Park. And the sign here is hikers, bikers move to the side of the road when a vehicle approaches, but here's all a bunch of alligators here hanging out. So I thought that was pretty amusing, that, you know, using a creative way to get dinner. So people always say, well, you know, aren't alligators aggressive, and are they going to come after you? Are they really man eaters? And the answer is no. Alligators are actually fairly docile in the realm of crocodilians. The cases where there are interactions between people and alligators that are negative is where people have fed alligators, and so they've lost their fear of humans, or in a case where someone might be in the vicinity of an alligator nest or a baby alligator. Speaking of nests, so where and when do alligators nest? Well, the mating season starts in May and June. And during that time, you might hear alligators bellowing, or you might be lucky enough to see an alligator displaying where the little droplets of water come off the water. This is a male. The males do this subsonic vibration that triggers these little water droplets. Both the males and the females bellow. The nesting will then occur in June, early July, and the babies hatch in August and September. And the mama alligator will build a vegetation nest, and she'll build this either out of a mound of vegetation that's right in the marsh area, or she will find a place like a little tree island, either a small one like this, or actually on a tree island that's more fully developed, and lay her eggs inside of that mound. And she'll lay anywhere from 30 to 70 eggs, and these are about the size of a big goose egg. They have a hard shell and a parchment membrane inside, and she'll put them in layers inside of this nest. And in a lot of cases, the mama alligator will defend the nest. And so when we're doing our studies and trying to understand what's going on with the nesting, it's generally we have to either have somebody on guard watching out for mama alligator, or we actually catch her so that we can work up the nest without worrying about her attacking us. So the thing about her defending the nest is that if there's another critter like turtles or snakes or lizards that put their eggs in this nest, they also get their eggs protected by the mama alligator. And so after about 63 days, the babies hatch out, and they will start, even before the nest mom has come back to the nest, they'll start making a little chirping noise. And she'll hear that and know that it's time to open up the nest and let them out. They also use that sound to alert each other of danger or to call over mama alligator if they feel like they're threatened. Now you notice that they're this black color with the yellow cross bands, and you see how well they blend in here into the water and the vegetation with that. Remember that for when we look at the baby crocodiles, because they're a little bit different coloration, but their coloration matches very well with the habitat in which they live. So crocodiles nest a little bit earlier than alligators do. They actually start their nesting in March and April. Start their mating in March and April, and they're nesting in April and May, and then they hatch in July. And one of the interesting things that we've done is we've looked at the timing of the hatching of crocodile nests, and it's actually getting earlier in the year, and that is correlated with warmer sea surface temperatures, which are correlated with the changing climate. So the crocodiles nest along these sandy beaches and at the exposed shoreline, and this is actually a crocodile nest right in here. And we find them by looking for the tail drags and the tracks. So this is a mama crocodile going into this nest site here. And then we find the mound where she constructed the mound out of soil, or the other thing that crocodiles will do is dig a hole. Unlike alligators, they don't use vegetation except incidentally in their nest. They use soil. And this on the left here is actually a hole nest where she didn't bother to build up that mound like you saw in the previous picture, but she just dug a hole like a sea turtle does. And these are the shells from a hatched nest. And so crocodiles have a little bit longer incubation period than alligators, so it's about 90 days. And when they hatch out, it's similar in that the mom will come and let them out. What's different between alligators and crocodiles is that the mama alligator will stick around with her babies for a little while, 1 to 2 years sometimes. Whereas the mama crocodile basically comes, opens up the nest and lets the babies out, and they're pretty much on their own after that. And you see that they're a little bit different coloring. They're more of this darker, they're kind of black with a little bit of yellow and a little bit lighter tannish color to match the sand, and also the where they end up in the exposed shoreline. So that's kind of the quick overview of alligator and crocodile basics. And now I want to talk about how we use them for indicators in the Everglades. And alligators are a really critical part of the Everglades ecosystem, very much like the buffalo of the plains. They serve a lot of different functions. They create both the high ground in terms of their nests, but also the low ground and depressions like these alligator holes and ponds. And these alligator holes and ponds create a lot of habitat for a variety of things, including fish and wading birds. And I always joke with my fish friends about the alligator holes and their role as refugia or as restaurants, depending on who you are. And so if you're a fish, you might, if you're safe in there and wading birds aren't feeding on you or alligators aren't feeding on you, it's a refugia. But if it gets too dry and you become available for other critters, then it's serving more as a restaurant for those critters and not so much a refugia for you. Crocodiles are also a really good indicator of another aspect of the Everglades, and that's the coastal ecosystem. And one of the things that crocodiles were in danger. They've been downlisted to threatened. They are still a threatened species. And they illustrate the importance of the freshwater flow into the Everglades. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that translates into our monitoring program and how we track that information. So with our hypotheses relative to restoration, we've altered the water depths, the patterns, the salinity, and how much food is available, the prey abundance. And this has resulted in fewer alligators, lower relative abundance, and alligators in poor body condition, or basically skinnier for the length that they are. And for crocodiles, our hypothesis is that the increased salinity because of the lack of freshwater flow into the estuaries has reduced growth and survival and density and body condition of crocodiles. And so what we're trying to do with restoration is fix these things of the altered water depth and patterns and the salinity. And we're tracking how well we're doing on that by these performance measures that we have for alligators and crocodiles. And so basically, the simple version of this is, how is restoration going to help? More water, more fish, more food, more and fatter crocodiles and alligators. And the same things that affect crocodiles and alligators are affecting the wading birds. And so we talk about this as needing to fix the Everglades food machine. And so to know how well we're doing on that, or how well we will be doing when we get these projects implemented, with the restoration projects implemented, we have a number of things called performance measures for both alligators and crocodiles. There's relative abundance, how many alligators, well, both alligators and crocodiles, how many there are per distance, their body condition, how fat they are for their length. And this is like if you go to the doctor and they give you your body mass index, we essentially do the same thing for alligators and crocodiles. And then alligator hole occupancy, because we think historically that 75 to 100% of the alligator holes that were out there were occupied. And in some of the areas that are overdrained, that occupancy has really declined because there just aren't enough alligators there. And then for crocodiles, we look at growth, survival, and nesting. The growth and survival are really tied to the salinity patterns, and I'll show you some of the data that we've collected relative to that. And so how do we do this? Well, for looking at the abundance and distribution, or how many there are per area, we go out at night and we shine a flashlight out and we look for eyes. And we do this for both alligators and crocodiles. And so we can do this in the marsh areas, or we can do it on the exposed shorelines. And we find the eye shine, and then we sneak up on the alligator and then estimate the size. So we have not only how many alligators there are, but we have what size they are. And we can look at this across a range of areas. All of the blue bars are in the Everglades, and then the two tan bars are the ones that are a little bit further north at Lake Woodruff and Lake Apopka, north of here in Central Florida. And one of the things that you'll notice is that there's this red line here, and that's the target we have for Everglades restoration. And so we want to have at least that many alligators per kilometer in each of these areas. And you can see that we're not doing too well here. We've got Big Cypress, we've got Water Conservation Area 3A and 3B, Everglades National Park, Water Conservation Area 2, and then Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge. And so Loxahatchee is the only one out of the ones we're sampling, well, a little bit, this particular route in Conservation Area 3 is just above the line, but most of the areas we have not reached the target we want for Everglades restoration. And we can look at this a little bit differently, where we plot the green area is the target, that was what we want. The yellow is we're not there, but we're not, you know, we're not, maybe not too far away from it. And red is we're way further away from it than we want to be. And so each of these lines is one of these different areas. And you can see that that's the Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge, is the only one that is in the green completely, and the rest of them are in the yellow or the red, and that there appears to be a decline in the number of alligators. And so we looked at this, and when we look at it, we are able to see if there are trends in the number of alligators over time. And the solid blue means that there's no declining or increasing trend. The dotted red lines are areas where we've seen a declining trend. And so in some of the areas where we're monitoring, like in particular in Everglades National Park and Conservation Area 3B, and here in the northern part of 3A, we're seeing declines in numbers of alligators. And so why is that? What is it that's going on there that is contributing to the decline? And one of the things that we noticed is that the areas that have declined are drier, and the areas that haven't declined are the wetter areas. And so we have hydro periods longer than 11 months per year, and dry downs that aren't very severe. They're no longer than 40 days, and there's at least 2 years between dry downs. So dry downs, as you guys probably all know, are a very important part of the Everglades ecosystem, but not if they happen every year, because you have to have enough time for the prey, the fish, to be able to recolonize and grow and come back and provide the functions for food for both alligators and crocodiles. I mean, not alligators and wading birds. So we can do a similar kind of thing with crocodiles, where we look at how many crocodiles there are along each of these survey routes, and each of these different colors is a different survey route. And so this is the Turkey Point Power Plant site in Homestead. So this is Biscayne Bay. Here's, Crocodile Lake National Wildlife Refuge is around in here. And then over here is the Flamingo Cape Sable area. And so if you want to go see crocodiles, you can go down to the main park road. And actually in Westlake, there's often one hanging around. And then definitely down in Flamingo and Buttonwood Canal, these days it's pretty easy to see a crocodile if you want. But so we've done these surveys, and we've looked at the trends over time for crocodiles. And with crocodiles, we also see this negative trend over time, so from 2004 to 2014. And we looked at it in different habitats and how it is related to salinity. So remember, I was talking before about how salinity was one of the things that we think is a stressor that is one of the things that has caused declines in crocodiles within the Everglades ecosystem. And so what we see here is that in all cases, in the canal, the coves, and the creeks, as salinity increases, the number of crocodiles that we see decreases. And so it varies both by habitat type and by survey route. And I'll come back to how this also relates to, we'll talk about how salinity is important for both growth and survival, as well as the number of crocodiles that we see. So in addition to just looking at how many animals there are there, we want to know something about how healthy the alligators and crocodiles are. And so we use body condition to help us understand that. And for alligators, we've caught alligators in all of these different areas from Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge all the way down through the estuaries in Everglades National Park. And we catch them and we weigh and measure them. And we can look at them and tell whether they're in good condition, whether they have nice, healthy, robust jowls, or if they're not in such good condition. And we can do this for both alligators and crocodiles. And interestingly enough, this crocodile here was captured 1 year, and you see it looks in pretty good shape. It was captured the next year, and it was extremely skinny and extremely emaciated. And one of the things was that this particular animal was in an area that was very, very high salinity. And so this supports our hypothesis about the effects of high salinity on the health and body condition of crocodiles. As with the surveys, we want to look at where are the alligators where do they have higher or lower body condition? And so similar to those graphs, our yellow is the intermediate, the green is and we've reaching the target that we want for Everglades restoration, and red is we're not there with the target. And so these are our mean values, and then this is the range and the variation around those means. And so we have we only have a few that are reaching into the green. Most are in this yellow range, and a few that are also reaching into the red. And we can, again, like we did with the abundance, we can look at how the patterns are changing over time. And we can look at it by individual area, which is what we have here, or we can look at across all of the samples that we have. And when we look across all the samples from 2000 to 2014, there is a negative trend in body condition of alligators within those freshwater marshes in the Everglades. And so we were curious as to whether or not the alligators we have in the Everglades are skinnier than alligators that there are in other places in Florida. And so we compared some data from some of the work that the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has done on some of the lakes and St. Johns River, Lake Trafford, and looked at body condition of those alligators in comparison to alligators in the Everglades. And so this is our average alligator body condition, and this is the geographic area where they live in. And you can see that all the ones on this left side are from the Everglades, and then these four top ones up here with the higher body condition are from other places outside of the Everglades. And we also, in addition to looking at those locations, we looked at the trophic state of the lakes, of the bodies of water that were in there. And there is a correlation between body condition and the trophic state of the lake. Not surprisingly, because generally when you have more nutrients in the lake, you have more productivity. Some interesting things going on with Lake Trafford, because they also there's really high abundance of alligators in Lake Trafford, but it's fairly low. It's a lower body condition than the other ones. And so, there's some interesting things that could be going on there. We can do the same kind of thing with crocodiles. And again, this is our body condition on the y-axis, and these are our different locations on the x-axis. And two of the key locations, this is northeastern Florida Bay here, and this is the Cape Sable area. And the Cape Sable area is showing an increase in body condition, and the northeastern Florida Bay area is showing a decrease in body condition. The significance of that is this is where historically the most of the crocodiles lived. And this is an area that has altered salinity. And one of the things that restoration is supposed to do is to help to restore that salinity to a more historic pattern, which we think was better supportive of crocodiles. We can also look at the body condition of crocodiles over time, and we can see how it declined from 1978 to 2002, and then increased a little bit, and then appears to be in another period of decline. And one of the next steps is to as we've done with the alligators, is begin to relate the changes that we're seeing with this to things like the salinity and water flows. So with the crocodiles, we've also been able to look at growth rates. And so one of the things about looking at nesting with crocodiles and getting the nests and being able to tag hatchlings is that we have this huge data set of animals that we were able to track from time zero hatchlings up through, now 24, 25 years. And so what we found is that animals that are recaptured in high salinity areas have slower growth rates than those in low salinity areas. And so after, what this translates into is that there's a 13% difference in those two types of animals after 1 year. And by 10 years, there's a 30% difference in growth. So what that means is that the animals in the lower salinity are reaching maturity faster than the ones in the higher salinity. We also can look at because we have the hatchling data, we can look at survival, and we can look at how survival changes both with age, but also by geographic area. And so one of the key times in both alligator and crocodile life is when they're hatchlings, because they're pretty small at that point and there's a lot of things that can eat them. And so that's when they're most vulnerable. And so if we look at our 1 year survival rate on average, it's about 25%. And then the survival rate increases after that, as you would expect, as they get bigger and bigger. And so by the time they're 6 or 7 or 8 years old, their survival is above 80%. One of the things that was really interesting is that if we look at this by geographic area, Crocodile Lake National Wildlife Refuge had the highest survival, and northeastern Florida Bay, again, this area that historically had the populations of crocodiles and that we're trying to restore it, had the lowest survival rate. And so again, this is reinforcing our notion that salinity is impacting crocodiles, and we have a kind of a natural experiment that happened that again, it reinforces that it's not a causal study. We took advantage of information that was there, and in 1986 there was a nest found on the canals in that part of around Cape Sable would let fresh water in, or let salt water into the freshwater marshes behind them. And so in 1986, they plugged one of those canals with the purpose of keeping the fresh water back behind that area. And a mama crocodile came and laid her eggs there, and so those crocodiles hatched out in that area, which now had a more desirable salinity regime because it was again blocked off from the coastal system. And the hatchlings hatched out, and then 10 to 15 years later, we have a big spike in nesting over there, and we strongly suspect that it's from these animals that were hatched out in this early period being able to survive and reproduce because of the changes in the salinity conditions. And if we look at how the number of nests have changed over there over time, in the Cape Sable Flamingo area, there's been a 13% increase in the number of nests over there, whereas in northeastern Florida Bay, there's only been a 3% change. In the last 10 years, neither of those areas showed a trend, but what's a little bit concerning was that in the last 5 years, and this was through 2017, there was no trend in Cape Sable Flamingo, which isn't really a problem since there were over 100 nests there, but it's this decline in nests in northeastern Florida Bay. And so this is just an indication to me that we really need to keep pushing to get the fresh water into northeastern Florida Bay as soon as we can to help restore crocodiles and the appropriate salinities in crocodiles there. So in summary for the crocodiles, the location, frequency, and duration of these higher salinity conditions do affect crocodiles. We have nesting occurring differently in different areas, and there's more nesting in areas with lower salinity. and body condition, growth, and survival also are better with lower salinities. And there are both physiological reasons, because the baby crocodiles can't really stand the higher salinity until they get to be about 50 centimeters. But the other thing that's related is the food supply. And so in these higher salinity areas, the food base is different than it is in the lower salinity areas. So what we think is going to happen is that when there's these projects like the C1 level spreader, which increases freshwater flow into these coastal areas, that it will both provide better conditions for crocodiles themselves, but also provide better conditions for the prey that they feed on. So what do we do with all of this information? How do we use this to help us with Everglades restoration? So one of the things we've done is we've used this to help develop what are called ecological planning tools. And these are models that are used to help when we're trying to decide which restoration plan to move forward with. And we've got this for both alligators and crocodiles. For the alligators, we've got an alligator production suitability index model. And for crocodiles, we have a growth and survival index model. This information can also be used to help to develop operations plans. If you remember from where I was talking about the conditions where we were seeing declines in alligators versus no declines. So that tells us something about how frequently droughts, or how frequently really dry conditions should happen in an area and what the hydroperiods should be. And then the last thing is we can use these to look at system-wide ecological evaluations. And what we do is we put all the information together on both alligators and crocodiles, and we can score these different geographic areas based on those performance measures. And so again, following the red, yellow, green, each area has a color based on how well it's doing. And so we can do this. We've done this since 2008. And you know, the kind of the unfortunate thing is we are not seeing much change yet, but we also haven't implemented a lot of restoration projects to really expect to see that change. The exciting thing is that in the next 2 years, there should be a number of projects that are in place that will help us to change these trends from these reds and yellows to greens. The black here is where we had funding cuts, so we weren't able to continue those sampling. Now, we did reinitiate sampling and we'll be able to report on the trends in these areas next reporting cycle. And so what we hope to do by all of this is to ensure that we have both alligators and crocodiles left in the Everglades so that everybody has the opportunity to see both of them, and that we continue to be the place in the world where you can say this, see you later, alligator, after a while, crocodile, and be biologically correct, because we are the only place in the world where we have both a native species of alligator and a native species of crocodile.
Yeah, very good, excellent. You presented it so very well. I suppose we got a lot of questions, but I was going to point out that up at Blue Cypress Lake, which we've gone out many times, and they have a lot of alligators there. I think they give out 50 permits a year to people to collect them. That was a few years ago. I don't know if they're still doing 50. It seems like a large number of permits to collect alligators.
Yeah, so the Fish and Wildlife Commission has a number of programs for alligator harvesting, and they've done a lot of research looking at what is a sustainable harvest. And so the 50 permits is then based on surveys that are done to determine how many alligators are there. And like I said, they've done a lot of work to determine what that sustainable level is. So I'm betting there's a bunch of alligators out there.
Do you think the crocodiles are going to be moving north into freshwater? Yeah.
I think they're going to be moving north, following the coast, like they do. I mean, we've already seen, like I said, we've already seen some animals up further north than usual. They will stay in the coastal areas, I think, primarily driven by temperature, because they are a tropical species, and so as you get further inland, it gets a little bit cooler, and they can't withstand that.
I was in Bangladesh collecting mosquitoes. So I was dipping for larvae in this wetlands. And I noticed out about 100 feet from me, it was this sort of nest-like thing. I didn't really pay much attention to it. And as I was dipping, this crocodile came roaring up to me and stopped about 10 to 12 feet from me. It didn't attack me, but I couldn't move. I was so scared.
Yeah.
Petrified. And it just stopped there, and I was able to slowly back away. But I was so happy that she had stopped, you know. So that's one of my big things. There was a large crocodile too in the Bangladesh area there.
Yeah, yeah.
One person wanted to know, they wanted to confirm, how far north do crocodiles extend along the coasts?
Okay, so historically their distribution was up to Lake Worth, and on the East Coast, and then about the same distance north on the West Coast. We are seeing reports of them up in Sarasota County, up in around Sarasota, and they aren't nesting up there yet, but it does seem like more and more animals are occurring up the coast. The nesting right now is limited to Biscayne Bay is the most northern that we know that there's nesting.
Okay. We have an anonymous person who said, so the sea is getting saltier and the ocean is intruding in many areas, so likely to increase likelihood of crocodiles?
I'm not okay. So their distribution will follow that front in, if that's what the question is. But the challenge will be, where are they going to find places to nest, because they need the high ground. And so with sea level rise, one of the challenges is that those nesting beaches are getting smaller and smaller, and in some cases disappearing. And they still need the fresh water, and so the saltiness isn't gonna make them increase, but like I said, they will follow those areas in as the environment changes.
Another question, are pythons affecting the food resources for alligators and crocodiles? Also, I have photographed alligator babies in the Loxahatchee that are blue. What causes that coloration?
Blue. Okay. So as far as the pythons and what they're eating, so right now we don't think that the pythons are eating the same, well, with a few exceptions. That the diet of pythons is a little bit different than the diet of alligators. One of the things that python food habits might be affecting is how many mammals are available for alligators to eat. But it also appears that in the Everglades marshes, most of the alligators are eating fish and turtles and amphibians and invertebrates. So right now, we don't think that there's a huge impact of the python diet on alligator diet. But the other thing is, what's going to happen when the pythons eat all the mammals? Are they going to shift their diet to eat the other things that are out there?
Okay. Will croc and alligator health play a role in improving the entire ecosystem? Can they keep certain species in check and benefit certain species and plants?
Yes. So with alligators, well, both with alligators and crocodiles, I was saying they create a lot of the microtopography within the Everglades, both in the coastal areas, but also in the marshes. And so the alligators will create the alligator holes, which provide habitat for a lot of other aquatic things. They create, the edges of the holes also are very high in plant diversity. And so we've done a number of studies looking at vegetation gradients across alligator holes, and there's a higher plant diversity in those holes. So yeah, so they provide the function of those refugia. So when it dries out, there's a place for other things to be able to withstand those really dry conditions.
What do ancient fossil records show the extent of crocodiles? And were they only in Florida?
So if the question is related to the American crocodile, then yes, they were there. And actually there's some interesting genetics work done that shows the linkage between crocodiles in Florida and crocodiles in the Caribbean and Central America. And so the crocodiles, as far as we know, the American crocodile was never anywhere else in the United States.
Well, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Laura Brandt. We appreciate very much. Great presentation. And Mary, you did a terrific job tonight too, and keeping us on without any big problems going. Good luck in all your work. It's very important. It's really critical that we know.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate everybody turning out.
Very good.